Okay, guys, it's reading time anyways. Are y'all ready for that? Y'all ready to read for books? I should be a public speaker. My earphone's not in that side. Oh, I was gonna eat. Am I though? Or am I gonna read first and then eat? Seems like the better plan. Maybe I'll be more ready to eat by then. What the fuck am I even gonna eat? Are we gonna like go somewhere, or am I gonna have some beef jerky and some chips and salsa? That really sounds like the plan. That's interesting, but it's book time, so I'm gonna need you to be silent. Okay, let's go back to where we were. We were at they had went and visited Finoglio, and Finoglio wants to meet Dustfinger, right? Gotta take you guys out. And Mo promised Dustfinger already that he wouldn't take him or tell him where Dustfinger was, but he fucking straight up lied. I need y'all to like not look at my ugly ass painted fucking thing. But that's where it's most comfortable. Maybe I should get closer. But then I'm too in the sun. There's too many things. Okay. They're doing, they're gonna take Finoglio and his 2 grandchildren. We got new characters. Pippo and... who's the other one? Y'all remember the names? I swear if y'all remember and I don't. Pippo and... who? Lilac! What? Chill. Dude, who's the other little child? Paula and Pippo. Those are Finoglio's grandchildren. He's taking them so that they don't seem threatening or whatever. Right. Okay, I already read that. So chapter 26 is called Shivers Down the Spine and the Foreboding. This excerpt is from The Princess Bride. We've already had a few from there, but yay, reading time. But yeah, more. There's like a few that are like just recurring in these books, so I guess get used to it or something. I don't know. Okay. And that's when she put her book down and looked at me and said it. I think I already read this before. Life isn't fair, Bill. We tell our children that it is, but it's a terrible thing to do. It's not only a lie, it's a cruel lie. Life is not fair, and it never has been. And it's never going to be. Could y'all hear that? That was so loud. If y'all couldn't hear it, I'm not even going to tell y'all what it was. My stomach growls so loud. Dustfinger sat on the chilly stone steps waiting. He felt sick with fear, but he wasn't quite sure of what. Perhaps the war memorial behind him reminded him too much of death. He had always been afraid of death, which he imagined as cold too, like a night without fire. Now, however, he dreaded something else even more. Its name was Sorrow, and it had been stalking him like a second shadow ever since Silvertongue lured him into this world. Sorrow that made his limbs heavy and turned the sky gray. Beside him, the boy was running up and down the steps, up and down tirelessly, with light feet and a cheerful face, as if Silvertongue had led him straight into paradise. What could be making him so happy? Dustfinger looked around at the narrow houses, pale yellow, pink, peach, and the dark green shutters at the windows, and the rust-red tiles on the roofs. An oleander flowering in front of the wall as if its branches were on fire, Cat stalking past the warm walls, Ferret stole up to one of them, stroked its gray fur, and put it on his lap, although it dug its claws into his thighs. You know what people do to keep the number of cats down around here? Dustfinger stretched his legs and blinked up at the sun. When winter comes, they take their own cats indoors for safety, then they put out dishes of poisoned food for the strays. That's fucked up. Give me some water. Where was I? Ferret still fondled the gray cat's pointed ears, but his face was grim, not a trace left of the happiness that had just made it look so soft and open. Dustfinger glanced quickly aside. Why had he said that? Had the happiness on the boy's face upset him so much? Ferret let the cat go and climbed the steps to the memorial. He was still sitting on the wall, legs drawn up, when the other two came back. Silvertongue had no book with him, and he looked strained. His guilty conscience was clearly visible on his face. Why? What could have made Silvertongue look so guilty? I'm like sugar from my thingy. My mouth tastes sweet. Where'd I go? Dustfinger glanced suspiciously around without knowing quite what he was looking for. Silvertongue's face always showed his feelings. He was an open book, which any stranger could read. What are you barking at? Did you hear something? Was it just a giant whole entire tree floating down the river? That's kind of wild. Holy shit. It was literally like a whole tree with the leaves and everything. The roots, the top. Damn. I don't know if that's what's making this noise though. Paint job. Hold my skirt like a lady. I think that, I guess, was the noise. I don't know what else could it have been. What did you say? It's so hard to get comfortable in a fucking skirt. I mean, it wouldn't be if I wasn't facing a camera. Oh my god, no, mosquito! Get out! Get out. Go. Got outside. Okay. 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 As we were, gentle ladies. Ow, son of a bitch. Fucking bones, am I right? Did I even make it through like 2 pages? God. Silvertongue's face always showed his feelings. He was an open book, which any stranger could read. His daughter was different. It wasn't so easy to make out what was going on in her mind, but now as she came toward him, Dustfinger thought he saw something like concern in her eyes. Perhaps even pity. What had the writer fellow said to make the poor girl look at him like that? He got up and brushed the dust off of his pants. No copies left, am I right? He asked, when 2 of them had reached him. You're right, they've all been stolen, replied Silvertongue years ago. His daughter never took her eyes off Dustfinger. Why are you staring at me like that, princess? He snapped. Do you know something I don't? Bullseye, an accidental one too. He hadn't wanted to score a bullseye at all, certainly not a direct hit on an uncomfortable truth. The girl bit her lip, still looking at him with that same mixture of pity and concern. Dustfinger rubbed his hand over his face, feeling his scars on it like a picture postcard saying, "Greetings from Basta." There's a big hornet trying to get in. He could never forget Capricorn's rabid dog for a single day, even if he wanted to. Capricorn's rabid dog... What the hell? Y'all, I'm struggling. Like, went right back to the same sentence. To help you please the girls even better in the future, Basta had hissed in his ear before wiping the blood off of his knife. Oh, curse it all. Dustfinger kicked the nearest wall so hard he felt pain in his foot for days to come. You've told that writer about me, he accused Mo, and now even your daughter knows more about me than I do. Very well, out with it. I want to know now, too. Tell me. You always wanted to tell me after all. Basta hangs me, is it that? Strings me up and tightens the noose until I'm dead as a doornail, right? Why should that bother me? Basta is in this world now, isn't he? The story's changed. It must have changed. Basta can't hurt me if you just send me back there where I belong. Dustfingers took a step toward Silvertongue as if to grab him and shake him. Take out on him all that had been done to himself, but Maggie came between them. Stop it. It's not Basta, she cried, pushing him away. It's one of Capricorn's men, and he's waiting for you in the book. They want to kill Gwyn, and you try to help him, so they kill you instead. Nothing about that has changed. It will simply happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. Do you understand? You must stay here. You can't ever go back, ever. Dustfinger stared at the girl as if he could shut her up that way, but she held his gaze. She even tried to take his hand. You should be glad to be here, she faltered as he retreated from her. You can escape from them here. You can go away, far away, and... Her voice quivered. Perhaps she had seen the tears in Dustfinger's eyes. Angrily, he wiped them away with his sleeve and looked around like an animal in a trap, searching for some way out. But there was no way out. No going forward, and even worse, no going back. A trio of women standing at the bus stop glanced curiously in his direction. Dustfinger often attracted such glances. Anyone could see that he didn't belong here. A stranger forever. 3 children and an old man were playing football with a tin can on the other side of the square. Farrad looked at them, the Arab boy and Dustfinger's backpack over his narrow shoulders, and gray cat hairs clung to his pants. He was deep in thought, wriggling his bare toes into the gaps between the paving stones. He was always taking off the sneakers Dustfinger had bought him and going around barefoot, even on hot tarmac with the shoes tied to the backpack like loot he was taking home. Silvertongue looked at the playing children, too. Had he given some sign to the old man with them? The old fellow left the children and came over. Dustfinger took a step back. A shiver ran down his spine. My grandchildren have been admiring the tame marten that boy has on a chain, said the old man as he approached. Took another step back. Why was the dark-haired man looking at him like that? In quite a different way than the woman at the bus stop. The children say the marten can do tricks, and the boy's a fire eater. Perhaps we could come to the show and watch at close range? The cold shiver spread right through Dustfinger, although the sun was shining down on him. The way the old man looked at him, as if he were a dog who had run away long ago and was now back, tail between his legs, perhaps with lice in his coat, but definitely his, the old man's dog. Nonsense, we won't do tricks, he managed to say. There's nothing to see here. He retreated again, but the old man followed him, as if they were linked by an invisible thread. I'm sorry, said the old man, raising a hand as a face. Dustfinger backed up. Dustfinger's back came up against a parked car. Now the old man was standing right in front of him and still staring. Go away, Dustfinger pushed him roughly back. Farrad, bring me my things. The boy hurried to his side. Dustfinger snatched the backpack from his hand, picked up the marten, and stowed him in the pack, taking no notice of the animal's sharp, snapping teeth. The old man stared at Gwen's horns, fingers flying. Dustfinger slung the pack over his shoulder and tried to push past him. Please, I only want to talk to you. The old man barred his way and reached for his arm. Well, I don't want to talk to you. Dustfinger tried to free himself from the boy's bony fingers. They were surprisingly strong, but Dustfinger had the knife, Basta's clasp knife. He took it out of his pocket, snapped it open, and held it under the man's chin. His hand was trembling. He had never enjoyed threatening anyone with a knife, but the old man let go, and Dustfinger ran. He ignored whatever Silvertongue was calling after him. He just ran for it, as he had done often in the past. He could trust his legs even if he didn't yet know where they were taking him. He left the village and the road behind, dodged under some trees, ran through wild grass, plunged in among the mustard yellow bramble bushes, let the silvery foliage of the olive trees hide him. He had to get away. Wild country had always protected him. Only when every breath he drew hurt him did he throw himself down into the long grass behind an abandoned cistern where frogs croaked and the rainwater had collected among the gray stones steamed in the sun. He lay there gasping, listening to his own heartbeat and staring at the sky. The boy stood there. Ferret had followed him. "Go away," shouted Dustfinger. The boy crouched down among the wildflowers that grew everywhere. Blue and yellow and red splashes of bright color in the grass. "I don't want you," snapped Dustfinger. The boy said nothing, but picked a wild orchid and examined the bloom. He looked like a bumblebee on the tip of a flower stem. It looked like a bumblebee on the tip of a flower stem. "What a strange flower," he murmured. "I've never seen one like that before." Dustfinger sat up and leaned against the side of the cistern. "You'll be sorry if you keep running after me," he said. "I'm going back. You know where to." Only when he said it did he realize he had made up his mind long ago. Yes, he was going back. Dustfinger the coward was going back into the lion's den. Never mind what Silvertongue said, nor what his daughter thought. There was only one thing he wanted. He had never wanted anything else, and if he couldn't have it now, then at least he could hope that one day his wish would come true. The boy stayed sitting there. "Go away, will you? Go back to Silvertongue. He'll look after you." Ferret sat there unmoved, his arms around his knees. "You're going back to that village?" "Yes, the village where the devils and the demons live. Believe me, they'll kill a boy like you and eat you for breakfast. They'll enjoy their coffee all the more afterward." Ferret stroked his cheeks with the orchid. He made a face as the petals tickled his skin. "Gwen wants to get out," he said. He was right. The marten was biting the fabric of the backpack and sticking his muzzle out of it. Dustfinger undid the straps and freed him. Gwen blinked up at the sun, chattered crossly, presumably complaining that it was the wrong time of day, and scurried over to the boy. Ferret picked him up, put him on his shoulder, and looked earnestly at Dustfinger. "I've never seen flowers like this," he repeated, "or such green hills, or such a clever marten. But I know a lot about the kind of men you mean. They're the same everywhere." Dustfinger shook his head. "These are particularly bad." "No, not particularly." The defiance in Ferret's voice made Dustfinger laugh. He himself didn't know why. "We could go somewhere else," said the boy. "No, we couldn't. Why not? What are we planning to do in that village?" "Steal something," said Dustfinger. The boy nodded, as if stealing were the most natural plan in the world, and carefully put the orchid in his pants pocket. "Will you teach me a little more about fire first, before we go there?" Before, Dustfinger couldn't help smiling. The boy was a clever lad, and no doubt he knew there wouldn't be any after. "Of course," he said, "I'll teach you everything I know before we go there." Hey guys, hey everybody. Welcome into reading time. We're on chapter 27, page 274. The excerpt is from The Elephant's Child by Rudyard Kipling. "I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who." Okay. It's called A Good Place to Stay. Chapter 27 is. I think we're probably back to Maggie's point of view. They did not set off to join Eleanor after Dustfinger had left them. "Maggie, I know I said we would," said Mo as he stood in the square in front of the war memorial, feeling rather at a loss. "But I'd like to leave the journey until tomorrow. As I told you before, there's something else I have to discuss with Finoglio." The old man was still standing where he had been when he spoke to Dustfinger, staring down the road. His grandchildren were pulling at him and talking to him, but he didn't seem to notice them. "What exactly do you want to discuss with him?" Mo sat on the steps in front of the memorial and made Maggie sit down beside him. Do you see those names, he asked, pointing up at the chiseled letters listing people no longer alive. There's a family behind every name, a mother or father, brothers and sisters, perhaps a wife. If one of them were to find out that the letters can be brought to life, that someone who's only a name now could become flesh and blood again, don't you think he or she would do anything at all to make it happen? Maggie looked at the long list. Someone had painted a heart next to the name at the top, and there was a bunch of dried flowers on the stone steps in front of the memorial. No one can bring back the dead, Maggie, Mo went on. Perhaps it's true that death is only the beginning of a new story, but no one has ever read the book in which it's written. And the writer of that book certainly doesn't live in a little village on the coast playing football with his grandchildren. Your mother's name isn't on a stone like somewhere in a book, and I have an idea that just might make it possible to alter what happened 9 years ago. You're going back. No, I'm not. I gave you my word. Have I ever broken it? Maggie shook her head. You broke your word to Dustfinger, she thought, but she didn't say so out loud. There you are, then, said Mo. I want to talk to Finoglio. That's the reason I want to stay. Maggie looked at the sea. The sun had broken through the clouds, and all of a sudden the water was glistening and shining as if someone had poured paint into it. It's not far from here, she murmured. What isn't? Capricorn's village. Mo looked eastward. Yes, it's odd that he felt drawn here of all places, don't you think? As if he were looking for somewhere resembling the countryside of his own story. How the fuck do I get in here? Suppose he finds us. Nonsense. Do you know how many villages there are along this coast? Maggie shrugged her shoulders. He found you before, even when you were far, far away. He found me with Dustfinger's help, and you can be sure Dustfinger isn't going to help him again. Mo rose and drew Maggie to her feet. Come on, let's ask Finoglio where we can stay the night. He looks like he could use some company. Finoglio did not tell them whether Dustfinger looked like he had imagined him. He said very little as they walked back to his house. But when Mo told him that he and Maggie would like to stay there another day, his face brightened slightly. He even offered them a place to spend the night, an apartment he sometimes rented out to tourists. Mo gratefully accepted. He and the old man talked far into the evening, while Finoglio's grandchildren chased Maggie all over the nooks and crannies of the house. The two men sat in Finoglio's study. It was close to the kitchen, and Maggie kept trying to listen at the closed door, but Pippo and Rico always caught her in the act and dragged her away to the next flight of stairs before she heard more than a few words. Finally, she gave up. She let Paula show her the kitten scampering around with their mother in the tiny garden behind the house, and followed the three children to the house where they lived with their parents. They didn't stay long, just long enough to persuade their mother to let them stay at their grandfather's for supper. Supper was pasta with sage. Pippo and Rico picked the bitter-tasting green bits out of their sauce with disgusted expressions on their faces. But Maggie and Paula enjoyed the flavor of leaves. After the meal, Mo and Finoglio drank a whole bottle of red wine between them, and when the old man finally saw Mo and Maggie to the door, he said good night and added, So you'll look at my books as we agreed, Mortimer, and I'll get down to work first thing in the morning. What kind of work, Mo? Asked Maggie as they walked along the dimly lit alleys together. Night had hardly cooled the air at all. A strangely foreign wind blew through the village, hot and sandy, as if it were carrying the desert itself across the sea. I'd rather you didn't ask me that, said Mo. Let's just act as if we were on holiday for a few days. This looks like a good place for a holiday, don't you think? Maggie answered only with a nod. Mo really knew her very well, how he could often tell what she was thinking before she put it into words, but he sometimes forgot she wasn't 5 years old anymore. And these days it took more than a few kind words to distract her from her worries. Very well, she thought, as she silently followed Mo through the sleeping village. If he doesn't want to tell me what Finoglio's supposed to do for him, I'll ask the old turtle face himself. And if he won't say either, then then one of the grandchildren can find out for me. Paula was just the right size for a spy. It didn't seem all that long ago since Maggie herself had been able to hide unnoticed under a table. Page 278, another new chapter. I think we're going to Eleanor's point of view, guys, in this chapter. It's called Going Home. This little foreshadowing is from The Tempest by Will.I.Am Shakespeare. It's just one line. My library was dukedom large enough. Okay. It was almost midnight by the time Eleanor finally saw her garden gate beside the road. The lights down by the banks of the lake stood side by side like a caravan of glowworms, trembling as they were reflected in the black water. It was good to be home again. Even the wind that blew on Eleanor's face as she got out to open the gate felt familiar. It was all so familiar. The scent of the hedges and the earth in the air, so much cooler and moister than in the south. It didn't taste of salt anymore either. I might even miss that saltiness, thought Eleanor. The sea always filled her with longing, though for what she was never sure. The iron gate creaked quietly as she pushed it open, almost as if it were welcoming her home, but no other voice would greet her. I like my... I got it propped up now. What's up, Wilma? The iron gate creaked quietly as she pushed it open, almost as if it were welcoming her home, but no other voice would greet her. What a silly notion, Eleanor, she murmured as she got back in the car. Your books will welcome you home. That's good enough, surely. She had been in a strange mood even during the drive. She had taken her time on the way home, avoiding major roads, and had spent the night in a tiny place in the mountains, the name of which she had already forgotten. She had enjoyed being alone again, for that, after all, was what she was used to. Yet the silence in her car had suddenly begun to trouble her. And she had gone into a cafe in a sleepy little town that didn't even have a bookshop, just to hear other human voices. She hadn't spent much time there, staying only long enough to gulp down a cup of coffee, because she was annoyed with herself. What's all this about, Eleanor? She had muttered when she was back in the car. Since when did you long for human company? High time you were home again, before you go right around the bend. Her house looked so dark and deserted as she drove up to it that it seemed curiously strange to her. Only the sense of her garden made her feel a little better as she went up to the steps of the front door. The light over the door, which usually came on automatically at night, wasn't working, and it took Eleanor a ridiculous amount of time to get her key into the lock. As she pushed open the door and stumbled into the pitch-dark hall, she quietly cursed the man who usually kept an eye on the house and garden whenever she went away. She had tried phoning him 3 times before she set out, but she supposed he'd gone to see his daughter again. Didn't anyone realize what treasures this house contained? Of course, if they'd been made of gold, but they consisted only of paper and printer's ink. It was very quiet, and for a moment Eleanor thought she heard Mortimer's voice as it brought life into the church with the red walls. She could have listened to him for 100 years, no, 200 at least. I must get him to read to me aloud whenever he arrives, she murmured, taking the shoes off her tired feet. There must be some books he can read safely. Why had she never before noticed how quiet her house could be? It was silent as the grave, and the pleasure Eleanor had expected to feel as soon as she was back within her own 4 walls was slow in coming. Hello, here I am again, she cried into the silence as she felt along the wall for the light switch. Now you shall all be dusted and tidied again, my dears. The ceiling light came on very bright, and as Eleanor stumbled back in alarm, she fell over her own handbag, which she had put down on the floor. Oh, heaven, she whispered, getting to her feet again. Oh, dear heavens, oh no. The custom-made bookshelves were empty. The books that had stood on them so safely, spine beside spine, now lay in untidy heaps on the floor, crumpled, dirty, and trampled underfoot as if the heavy boots had been performing a wild dance on them. Eleanor began to tremble all over. She stumbled through her desecrated treasures as if she were wading through a muddy pond, pushed them aside, picked up one and let it drop, staggered on down the long corridor that led to her library. The corridor was no better. Greatly disordered piles of books were heaped so high that Eleanor could hardly make her way through the ruins. At last she reached the library door. It had not been locked. Eleanor stood there for an eternity, weak at the knees, before she finally dared to open it.